Good afternoon and welcome to our latest webinar. And you might notice things are going to be a little bit different today as we move to the new town hall technology to deliver today's webinar. Normally we use a live event, so things will be a little bit different for you, and they certainly are for us and the team producing this webinar. So if everything goes to plan, of course, we rehearsed it plenty of times. If things go a little bit glitchy at times, do bear with us as we get used to this new approach. So today we're going to have a look back at an event we did a couple of weeks ago, and let's just take you through a quick recap of what happened on the 22nd of November. We brought together 130 odd people across the forces, over 40 forces represented, to talk about neighbourhood policing. And you can see some of the images there and the instant feedback. And there was a couple of microphone issues, hence I'm hobbled over the podium on the bottom right-hand photograph there. But it was a really fantastic opportunity to engage around technology in neighbourhood policing. And we're going to cover some of the things we covered during that session today. Importantly, it was opened by Staffordshire's Chief Constable, Chris Noble, who spoke about the importance of digital data and technology, the importance of networking and collaborating, and explained some of the future challenges. And really pleased that the Chief was able to keep popping down throughout the day. One of the first things we covered was around some case studies of forces, and we're going to ask Richard and Simon to take them through them in a couple of seconds. But there on screen is a list of some of the things we talked about, and hopefully we're going to cover some of them today. For those who couldn't join it, or for those that were with us on the event, you can get a recap and follow up on what's taken place since. So let's start hearing about the 4 sessions themselves. So Rich, perhaps you could start off with Derbyshire and what they showed us about they've been doing.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. As you say, there was some great presentations, and Derbyshire kicked off the session, one of 4 forces that presented, and it's quite apt that Derbyshire were involved because their ACC Shooter is the lead NPCC for neighbourhood policing. And Derbyshire have got a couple of apps that were demonstrated in the session that really highlight some key challenges. And there was a definite theme running through all 4 presentations, and that was that abstractions are really having an impact on neighbourhood policing. Response officers and other officers are bolstered by staff from neighbourhoods, and that's really impacting the contact into the community. So forces are now trying to assess the impact of those abstractions. So that's definitely one of the areas that Derbyshire presented on. And what I particularly liked was the dashboard that was accompanied that very simple Power App capturing those abstractions. So a force can really see where the abstractions are and how impactful they are. I suppose the other element that was brought through in all 4 presentations was the engagement tool. How and who we're contacting within communities is increasingly important. So we've got that reflective practice in terms of, are we talking to the right people at the right times? Are we engaging properly and effectively? So some really good presentation, really good presentation from Derbyshire there. I'm now going to hand over to Simon Lawrence, who's going to walk through the Cumbria presentation.
Thank you. So next up we had Sergeant Dave MacDonald from Cumbria presenting their solution through Microsoft 365, which is working in partnership with key partners on antisocial behaviour through their hubs at each BCU, and how they have digitalised it using electronic referrals, which then goes through a series of steps and then is accepted or rejected. There's a form that's filled out using Microsoft 365 forms, and then each case is given to a lead agency and is managed still here. You'll see they still use Planner. They haven't got it onto lists yet. They still use Planner to do that. But what it actually highlights is having guest users, guest access in the tenant, sharing documents, and it's using people and partners who are trusted guests from corporate email addresses. They talked about the DPIA, and Dave Angel will talk about DPIAs in a second. However, they've not had any risk of a breach. There's been no concerns raised. They regularly weed who's in the who has guest access. But overall, it has sped up and made far more efficient how IASB is dealt with in a partnership, with a partnership approach using Microsoft 365 at little cost. And this app is available in the solution catalogue. And I'm sure Dave MacDonald, who won't mind me saying this, will talk anyone through it who hasn't seen it.
So
Thanks,
Rich,
Simon.
you covered another two for us. Rachel would have joined us today and feeling a bit under the weather. So Rich, if you actually could explain the other two for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So next up was Greater Manchester Police, and they presented on their Neighbourhood app, Neighbourhood Policing app. And again, a really simple power app that they've devised that is designed to capture and tackle two of those core problems that I referenced earlier on, which was abstractions and evidence of engagement with the communities to improve trust and confidence. So with one simple app, and with a series of drop-down menus, which is on screen at the moment, you can see that it records elements of neighbourhood abstraction and engagement. So there are four key areas that GMP wanted to tackle. One was what engagement was happening with communities, what their staff were doing around problem solving, what particular engagement, so appointments and community meetings that the staff were attending, and then finally where staff had been abstracted away from their core duties. So looking at those four key areas, they've been able to extrapolate that data into BI, business intelligence information, so that they can again accurately assess what the impact of abstractions away from core activities has been, which BCUs and wards are most impacted by that change, and also demonstrate quite clearly to the community that their outreach is making a difference, and that the community voice is being listened to. I think the term regularly mentioned was those groups that are least well heard. So again, it's demonstrating that GMP are engaging with those least well heard communities on a regular basis. We're now going to move on to Durham. And again, this is something quite close to my heart. So we had Ashley White and Dave Clark from Durham coming to present on a neighbourhood policing kin tracker. Now, where this started was within PDS. We have an engagement tool as engagement managers to capture data around all the engagement into PDS and out. And we felt it was a really great tool that could be adapted easily to manage kin networks. So Durham are really just at the beginning of their journey, changing that solution that we offered to them to fit to neighbourhood engagement. It's only just in pilot stage, and there's just 2 S&T areas looking at it at this early stage. And we'll be presenting the outcome of this early pilot in a webinar in the new year, which I look forward to working with the force on. Lots of discussion in the room, really interesting discussion, and it's stimulated by the presentation. And I particularly recall that not only were the force looking to build on that address book, if you like, of kin contacts, but also using it to see how they could then communicate out to key networks, particular targeted messages, without having to build emails and add in email addresses, which is fraught with danger in terms of data protection. You know, sending a key message out to the wrong individual is easily done through an email process, whereas you could use a targeted kin tool to really target messages out to the right people. So some really interesting, exciting developments in Durham there. So I'll hand back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Rich. So we've given you in about 8 minutes there, about an hour's worth of presentation, which was really fascinating and interesting. But one of the themes that constantly came in, and one of the things we were really pleased to say to secure for the event, we managed to bring Dave Angel along, who's from our information security team, to talk about DPIA. And Dave, perhaps you could outline what DPIA is and how important it is, and how perhaps it's an enabler, not a disabler, to the way we work.
Absolutely, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. So I led this session on myth-busting data protection impact assessments in the context of 365, as well as looking at some of the pitfalls that both myself and I've seen other forces have come across. So first and foremost, data protection impact assessments, or DPIAs, are primarily about managing risk and compliance as set out in the Data Protection Act and UK GDPR. But when done well, I find that they can also enable better public service. When leading on a project, it can be very easy to miss or skip things when you're so focused on the exciting, challenging deadlines ahead of you that you have to meet. And DPIAs really take you out of that headspace and let you critically analyze the project from a different point of view. And I found it can really bring out some of the issues and help preempt certain problems, as well as, you know, better protecting the personal data, and it also enables better decision making, and I found better outcomes as well. And that can be a lot broader than data protection compliance as well. They are also essential for building public trust, although sometimes I think it can feel like preventing a lack of trust rather than building it. They're essential tools to transparently document and ensure that the risks to data subjects, the people that these things, the processes are about, are appropriately considered. And then it's worthwhile noting with NEP to support forces, PDS and a number of forces joined together to develop template DPIAs or template DPIA for 365, which included a international transfer risk assessment for SWAY and other international transfer elements, as well as a number of tool by tool annexes for things like, you know, Dataverse and SailPoint to really deep dive into those elements. But as I and a number of forces were sort of going through this, there was a real problem that emerged with this approach. We rapidly found that forces ended up with unfinishable DPIAs. They just would never end. We want people to innovate, which constantly expands and changes what's going into this DPIA. But then on the same time, all you have to do is blink or sneeze, and Microsoft have usually changed or renamed something. It's impossible to keep up with. So you have this endless challenge of a document you can never finish, and you're doing lots of changes that probably aren't mitigating risk or actually helping anyone. So you end up with a document so long, even the bravest bureaucrat couldn't even stomach opening it. And so this comes to the how to make it potentially better and easier, which is sort of stepping away from this super in detail, super DPIA, and break it down into manageable chunks. It's about having that high level DPIA and then drawing out specific purposes with heavy references to the high level DPIA. And the high level one would have things like your global policies, your retention, common processing purposes to the whole organization like email, and split out specific projects that can then refer to that DPIA. And then you've got stuff that's manageable and it's doable. And you just kind of have to accept that you're going to do the best you can and you can review it later. But as long as you have something in place, it's better than nothing. Next slide, please. Yes, and then finally, just looking at using the cloud, it really is 365 really enables sharing between forces. It makes it easier. You can do it compliantly very easily. It is secure, and it's about accepting what cloud is and the risk position that we're all in around cloud, and it's okay. And we can do things a lot better using the cloud, just as long as we do it, you know, compliantly and carefully. But it can be done a lot more easily than it has been done before. I think it's just really embracing that way of working. And that's really the highlights of my talk, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. And again, DPIA and how it all works together has been a common thread through lots of conversations we have across business engagement, change adoption, and it's often seen as a real barrier, but hopefully the input that you gave helps those forces to go away and to think about DPIA in a constructive way and a way to help achieve more. And in terms of achieving more, the next session we had was a panel discussion chaired by Simon. What really came out of that was quite interesting. And Simon, perhaps you could explain about the panel and how that worked.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So we brought together a varied and diverse panel from across policing. And first off, we had James Margerton, head of IT, who we were really lucky to get because he missed the first day of MPTC to come and tell us about his experience of taking over as head of IT in Lancashire and how they had managed their journey of Microsoft 365. How they'd adopted it and how much more they wanted to do. And James gave some real insights into the things that were going good, bad and indifferent. We then also heard from Inspector Joe Faulkner from TVP Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. It was really interesting to listen to Joe talk about guest access and working with gold partners, and pushed on which gold partners to use. Joe's advice was that the same. It's not always the same fit for every force, so we as policing should speak to each other to make sure you get the right fit. She talked about guest access, how it was a real difficult journey to get the force to do this, something that's close to our hearts within PDS, around managing it properly to get the best out of letting people into a certain part of your tenant. We then spoke with Chief Inspector Ian Scott from Durham, and Ian talked about the journey from NEP to the current state of where the force thought they were a little bit more advanced than they were, and how they've got to where they are now, especially with some of the apps they've adopted. Richard's just talked about the KIN, the engagement tracker for neighbourhoods, and then also at some point I'm sure we'll hear about one they're adopting for firearms. And then lastly but not least, Gary Smartstead stood in at the last minute to cover Dorset, Devon and Cornwall, and Gary's role, as it says there, is the digital adoption team leader, and he talks about app development and how their team within Force are developing apps. And how they are looking to collaborate and share across the country with other forces to prevent silo working. We then had a Q&A session, which was really good, and some of the things that came out were that the issues were consistent across forces with Microsoft 365. One of the other things is what is PDS's position in supporting Microsoft 365, and we are no longer the NEP. The NEP finished over 18 months ago, and we don't have funding for this, but we have what our role is to help forces work together, collaborate, make officers and staff more efficient and effective through technology, and try and bring people together instead of working in silos. So there's lots we can do, but we won't be doing specific NEP work because we don't have the funding for that anymore from the Home Office. So Dave, I know that's a short update, but there was a really good and effective panel.
And that really got the conversation going for the networking breaks and over lunch about people who were sharing similar problems and were beginning to talk to each other about how to take things forward. And that was pretty much the aim of the event. One of the other key things we did in the afternoon was to have a look at what was happening in terms of what innovation do we all need as a set of partners in this, and how could we perhaps collaborate together. Now, Matt led that session for us, and Matt can't be with us today, but we've pre-prepared that one in a Blue Peter fashion. So I'll let Matt explain what that session covered, and then Rich will come in and explain the next steps.
Hi, my name's Matt Worley. I'm the PDS Innovation Manager, and I led an event at the M365 workshop to help identify some clear favourites around Power Apps. So what happened? Well, we asked each force at the event to identify what was their single most valuable Power App that they had developed that wasn't yet on the solutions catalogue. We also asked what Power App would they actually like to see being developed to add most value to their force. We had 2 rounds of voting, and a clear winner was identified, which was quite surprising to me and a few others in the audience. And as you can see from the chart hovering above my head, there's a clear winner: the Records Management System connector, finding a way for Athena and Niche to connect to the Power Platform suite of tools to make use of all the data contained within. This was followed by the House-to-House Inquiries app, and then by the Bail app, SNT Abstraction, and Power in Your Pocket app. And that final one was a way to access a body of knowledge through a single natural language interface via a mobile app. Now, I'm aware that there are some existing capabilities in place with the Power Platform in terms of RMS connectors, but they're likely to incur premium connector fees, which put them out of reach of some forces. I'm also aware that there are some forces who are actively working on developing their own RMS connectors, and I'm keen to bring them back to the group to make sure they're shared more widely at an appropriate point.
So, Rich, perhaps you could explain where we're going next with that.
Yeah, I was really blown away by the amount of conversation innovation in the room, and it's really telling that we had 45 solutions captured at the event. Now, some of these solutions are already built and in existence. Some of them are even currently residing on our solution catalogue. So if you haven't seen the solution catalogue, please do have a look. There may well be some solutions out there that would certainly fill a gap for you in your force. But what we will do, and this really does tip back to what Simon's just said in terms of funding within PDS. You know, this time last year we ran an event in Greater Manchester. We had the event hosted with Microsoft, and Microsoft were able to put together some funding, and we've been able to build some applications off the back of that. That's not available this time around, so we do need to be very pragmatic about what we can do and what we can't do. I think what we can do is certainly for the wish list apps and those that are already in development, we as business engagement managers are going to sit down, have a really good long look at the 45 solutions we've got, and just see if there's some commonalities. Can we sort of condense some of those solutions down into 1 or 2 apps, and maybe start to work with forces, and maybe forces that have already built some elements of those solutions, already have a solution out there, and work collaboratively around that. Certainly for the most popular delivered apps, what we would really love to do is sit with those forces that have got them in their own tenant and work out how we make that available to wider policing. So through the solution catalogue, I know it's a challenge for many forces to sort of wrap up and document those solutions, but it's really, really important that we make it as widely available as possible, because it gives a wider context to some of this fabulous platform that all forces have got access to. What we have found is building working groups around particular solutions does seem to be effective, and it absolutely plays into the heart of the event, which was about collaboration, sharing of ideas, sharing of learning. So where we have identified 1 or 2 top solutions, we will try and look to build a working group coalescing around particular lead forces to try and develop it and build those solutions. And I suppose coming back to the winning application, if you want to use that term, the connector into RMS, we'd really, really be keen to talk to forces that are actually building those connectors right now. If you're on that journey, you've started, or you've got somewhere near to the end, we would really love to hear from you. So reach out to your business engagement manager, tell us about what work you're doing on the connectors, and let's try and get some collective work, collective development around those solutions, because I think it's an absolute huge gap for forces and an absolute goldmine for innovation. So yeah, that's where we're going with that over the next 12 months. Back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Rich. And I think, you know, we've already had a couple of questions coming in on the chat, and I can answer one straight away because we've been busy working in the background. And Kelly's asking whether it'd be good if we could have a webinar on DPIA, and Dave's just given us the thumbs up. So we are going to plan that into the new year around leave, etc. So we'll put details on the PDS website. And actually, if you head over to the PDS website, you will find events running right the way through till March and February next year. So we've already got ahead and covered that. So what was the overall takeaway out of the event? Our local challenges are shared with others. You know, you might be working in a force on an issue, and what was very clear is that you've got colleagues in other forces working on exactly the same issue, trying to develop solutions there. So if there's any way we can collaborate to solve them, more than do. We haven't covered the technical too much in today's session. We are going to plan a technical webinar to cover some of the things that we did on there. But it's very clear from the feedback that the City of London gave us an input around modern management in the technical space, and that's definitely a huge opportunity for all forces. Collaboration on solutions makes absolute sense. I think that was a real consensus that came out of the day, and renewed that commitment to work together. And it's not just a matter of coming up with the solution then sharing it. It's perhaps coming up with the problem and defining that and sharing that will probably mean that you can group people together, as Rich explained, and we can do more together. We may all face the similar business change and adoption challenges, but some of the technical challenges are definitely shared across the way. And we did discuss throughout the session on ways we can support. I really do signpost you to the Force Collaboration channel. Don't wait for us to put a post in there. If you've got an issue, create a post and you'll see the conversation that works really well. In terms of what was the so what factor, what happened, vast majority of people who gave us feedback, and feedback's still open. If you did attend, check your email, you will find an email from us. Learned something, they felt inspired to do something, and they're going to go back and implement something as a result. Now, for us as organising an event, that we couldn't ask for better feedback than that. That is why we do these things, to help you to move these things forward. There's lots of conversation about DPIA. It's signposted opportunities to others to work on solutions. And that's the sort of thing that we really want to do more of as we continue going. It'd be remiss of me not to make a very big thank you to Staffordshire Police, my old force, and the Chief Constable in particular, who carved out quite a chunk of his day to spend time with the delegates, with the team, and to come into different sessions throughout the day. So a huge thanks to Staffordshire Police for hosting us. I think it's fair to say we weren't the worst guests they've ever had in the world. We did look after everything, and it didn't make it too much of a burden for them as well. So what's coming up in the next few weeks? We've got an awful lot, but first of all, please give us your feedback on these webinars. How's the new format gone? Is it okay having more than one screen? How's it gone? We are adopting the new town hall capability because the live events is going to be retired. We certainly found it a bit different. We've got a really good opportunity before Christmas coming up for Change Champions, the next Change Champions network meeting, which Rich helps to coordinate across policing. Is taking place on the 14th of December. If you want to get involved in that, if you're not aware of who your Change Champions are in force, please get in touch, and you can use the Contact Us section on the PDS website to get in touch and ask for a question on that, and we can get you in. Just going to pop the forthcoming events up and the link to the PDS website where events are. And a quick question that's come in, it's a comment coming from John in Devon, Cornwall and Dorset. So they're developing a niche connector, John. So that's the power of us coming together as a collective, and we can perhaps do some more of that. And I encourage you to speak to Esther, your business engagement manager, and make sure we're fully sighted on the work you're doing, and that'll be a really great way to take things forward. Just a final reminder of things that you do need to sign up for. If you head over to the PDS website, we have our Police Innovation Today event taking place straight after Christmas, 18th of January, and kindly hosted by our colleagues in Merseyside. And that's where you'll get to see forces explain how they've done innovation alongside a supplier to achieve real business benefit for the public and to achieve more. So do head over to the website, get yourself registered. This is only open to police colleagues only. It's a free event. You don't have to pay to come along, but please get across. And a teaser, we're going to be putting details out very soon about a modernising learning and development event we're working with the college on. So please, again, keep an eye on the PDS website as we put more and more details out. So we've got to hour. We've done it well. Hopefully the webinar went okay for you guys. Please let us know what you think, and we look forward to seeing you at our future events. One more webinar before Christmas, and then we'll be back in the new year. So thanks for joining us today.